Okay.
Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Dominique Lukey, and it's an honor to introduce today's program, a conversation about steps in countering hatred. Now, unfortunately, hate crimes are nothing new, but what is new is the disturbing climb in incidents. The U.S. Department of Justice reported that hate crimes increased by nearly 38% from 2020 to 2021, with a total of 11,000 cases reported, an alarming increase. In an effort to help, we've put together an outstanding panel for today's program, moderated by Sam Shinta. They'll talk about some of the root causes of hatred in society, with a focus on the action steps we can take to counter these forces. There will be time allotted for questions from our audience as well. A big thank you to our program sponsors, Leader Ethics, Dave and Barb Scogan, Festival Foods, Joe and Pat Heim, Ann Bryce and Bill Haviland, Tom Houlihan, and Suzanne Young. Our program hosts are the La Crosse Tribune, the Winona Daily News, the Chippewa Herald, and the La Crosse Area League of Women Voters. Thank you so much for your continued support. And now I'd like to turn the program over to our moderator, Sam Shinta.
Hello, I'm Sam Shinta from Leader Ethics. We're so happy that you were able to join us today. A democratic cornerstone of the United States is the ability to accommodate differing perspectives in order to come together and move forward as a nation. This cornerstone is challenged when Americans vilify other Americans from differing backgrounds and beliefs. Sadly, this too often leads to acts of violence. With recent events in the Middle East, hate and violence are once again in the forefront, including the recent tragic murder of a 6-year-old in Illinois. Today, we are joined by two leaders of a growing movement to counter hatred in the United States, to offer insights into the approaches that they and their groups are using to bring people together in an effort to ease tensions and hatred and to reduce violence. Masood Akhtar is an Indian-born, proud American Muslim entrepreneur and community activist. A Madison resident and successful businessman, Akhtar founded We Are Many, United Against Hate, an organization focused on teaching forgiveness and peace, addressing the root causes of hate, bigotry and racism, and building inclusive communities, with a special emphasis on empowering youth. He has received numerous national and state awards. He was among 21 Americans honored at the White House by President Biden under the United We Stand initiative. Arno Michaelis is a speaker, filmmaker, author of My Life After Hate, and co-author of The Gift of Our Wounds. His storytelling stems from an intention to inspire people to see themselves in others and see others in themselves. Arno also works as an interventionist at Parents for Peace, helping to lead people away from all violent extremist ideologies and to support their families. Refuge, his latest film project, is now available on Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, Google Play, and Vudu. Arno has been a professional public speaker since 2010 and has captivated audiences around the world. His keynotes and workshops leverage noble qualities of compassion, curiosity, and kindness to engage all human beings, building foundations for diversity appreciation and cultural agility. Uniquely positioned to facilitate healing for people who have been targets of hate, he has dedicated the past 14 years to forging inclusivity, compassion, and nonviolence. We will hear from both Masood and Arno today to share their perspectives on this issue of hate and what we as Americans can do to counter hate. After both share their experiences and share their wisdom, I will ask them a few questions, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for your questions. If you have questions along the way, we ask you to use the chat function in the Zoom to post your questions, and I will then read those off. We will start with Masood.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Sam, for a very powerful introduction. Really appreciate it. And I would personally like to thank Leader Ethics for hosting this very timely event. particularly based on what's happening in our neighboring state. Just a little bit background about the movement. We are many united against hate. To give you a little bit background how I started that. It all started, as you know, being a part of the Muslim community. Since 9/11, I have been actively engaged with our community, organizing events, because we believe that engagement is the way to change the misconceptions people might have about Islam and Muslims. So I've been actively engaged organizing events, educating people to change their perception. And in 2016, unexpected thing happened. I did receive a phone call from a local TV station where they asked, well, there is a discussion in the White House about starting a Muslim registry in America. And that was the saddest moment of my life. I came from India 40 years ago. Didn't know how I'm going to respond, so I went on television and the question was asked. And my response was that I came from India 40 years ago and I gave up my Indian citizenship based on what this country offers. Singling out a minority based on religion is not what America is all about. And I got very emotional at that time. And a thought came to my mind and I said, but I like the idea of starting a registry that will bring people together, regardless of their ethnicity, color, religion, or even political affiliation. And so I mentioned
I'll take the sourdough milk, please.
Yeah, it's a double.
No. And I don't want ketchup or mustard.
Nope, it just comes with grilled onions.
And could I have French fries?
Do you want to drink as well?
Water, please.
Okay. Is there anything else I can add to your order?
That's it.
Hila, can you mute yourself, please?
Yeah, please order
Thank
French
you.
fries and eat too, but mute yourself. Can you? There you go. All right. I think I'm back to minus French fries.
Masood, no, you're muted.
You did, okay. Can you hear me all right? All right, wonderful, thank you. So anyway, as I was going through my emotions on that TV interview, I said, well, Hitler started a Jewish registry back in Germany. You saw what happened. This is America. It's not going to happen here. So on that show, I announced that on your show, I'm announcing I'm going to start a movement called Anti-Hate Registry, and I will bring everybody together. Obviously, that answer shocked the host. That answer shocked me as well because I didn't know. And the response was overwhelming from the community. So the very first thing I did, I incorporated this movement as a nonprofit, nonpartisan, and started a board of advisory board of representing different communities and elected officials of both parties. And that's the time, the very first one that I reached out to my friend here, Arno and Pardeep, because my focus was how I'm going to do this. Based on my 9/11 experience, engagement was critical to actually remove some of these conceptions that people have. So I was looking for real life stories of people. And Arno, a story that you're going to hear today with what happened at Sikh temple shooting is a real life stories of two people, how they came together and started promoting peace. So I started recruiting some of those advisory board members, start sharing it. The same example of a Muslim community, a 21-year-old son was killed because of misconception. The father went to the court and the last day he made the announcement, look at this guy's face, and said, you were misguided, you killed my son. I am Muslim, I practice my religion, Islam. I will forgive you today because Islam teaches forgiveness. So all of those people are on my board, whether it's a KKK leader, neo-Nazi, all of those people, because I take them to classroom. The other thing was how to empower these students. So we have Arno, we have Parvi, we have other people. We take them to classroom because that resonate with all sorts of people, particularly youth. So I created a student ambassador board. Now, a number of these, because of the positive impact of this movement, number of these students who are on my student ambassador board, different schools, have started chapters of Yemeni United Against Hate. And now there are 5 chapters overseas, and we have a business advisory council that also financially support this movement. Now, based on what we have seen so far, while we are making impact, we also have some concerns about the way things are happening. You saw that what happened in Chicago. 6-year-old boy was killed simply because was a Palestinian Muslim. That is a tragedy. So things that happen overseas also have impact on what happened here. So the way we have to deal with this kind of thing is 2 ways that I always think about. One idea that promotes is the real life stories of people. A lot of people are reacting out of fear that has been created, unfortunately, sometimes by our mainstream media and also some elected officials. So I think it's critical to build the unity is to have the elected officials of both parties condemning the strongest way possible of these kinds of acts, just like the way they did it when 9/11 took place. So one of the things that I'm working on right now is creating a Wisconsin nonpartisan unity council where I'm going to reach out to elected officials of both parties to co-chair. I'm also working on creating a national unity caucus, nonpartisan, to do the same thing. So once we do the education and take this approach, I think we're going to make a huge impact. With that, I'm going to ask Arno to actually share his story, part of what we do through We Are Many United Against Hate.
Thank you, Masood. Thank you, Sam, and everybody at Leader Ethics and all of our sponsors. I really appreciate the effort that has been put into this event. I'm also happy to see everyone joining. I appreciate you all giving us a part of your day and making it a priority to bring about a society that's less hateful. As mentioned in my bio, I call myself a storyteller. That's basically what I do for a living. My meat and potatoes is speaking engagements. I've been doing it for 14 years and also written 2 books and been involved in filmmaking recently as well. All of my storytelling is informed by my past as a white nationalist from 1987 to 1994. Looking back at my life, I try to understand what led me into white nationalist hate groups and what led me out. Those are the 2 most frequently asked questions that I get. I'm going to head off some of the questions right now to answer those questions. Other than that, though, I look forward to any thoughts and questions the audience may want to share. And I'll remind them that nothing's off limits. I'm happy to answer any question. The more difficult, the better. As far as how I got involved in white nationalism, my story is a bit of an outlier. I grew up in a nice house in a nice neighborhood. I never went hungry. I never took a beating. I've been working now in counterviolent extremism internationally for 14 years. And in this space, I'm what's known as a former, as in a former violent extremist. I have friends who are formers from every possible type of violent extremist ideology you can think of. I know many other former white nationalists. I know a number of former Muslim supremacists, as my colleague Mubin Shaikh calls that form of violent extremist ideology. One of my closest friends is a former Antifa from Denmark named Søren Lerg. And Søren and I would have killed each other 30 years ago. Today, we meet to help kids overcome hate and division. We work to organize community meals and build things like skate parks that create community resiliency and unity amongst young people. Now, all of the aforementioned former friends I have are, if you listen to their stories, they're very rife with adverse childhood experiences, as it's put in the mental health industry. In my case, if you're just looking at a cursory view of my childhood, it wasn't very adverse. And I don't think it was, even from my perspective. I think there's billions of children on this planet who would feel like they won the lottery if they were able to switch childhoods with me, because I really had everything I needed. Though I grew up in a suburb of Milwaukee that was very well to do, and by the standards of that suburb, I was like the poor kid. But by global standards, my family was fantastically wealthy. The issue in my life growing up was my father's alcoholism. And when I say that, a lot of people think like, well, dad must have been abusive or mean, but my dad wasn't a mean drunk. He was a fun drunk. And what that meant for a little boy was, when dad was drunk, we're going to shoot guns in the basement and light off fireworks in the backyard. When I do talks with Party, he reminds me that's not a normal thing for most people. And I understand that, but it was normal for me. And I had a lot of fun doing that, but it wasn't fun for my mother. There were times when she was working 2 jobs to keep the lights on and the bills paid in our nice house in a nice neighborhood. And the stress of having the entire financial future of our house on her shoulders was really difficult for her. And her relationship with my dad was horrible. They were constantly arguing about his drinking, about money, about all the pressures that alcoholism can put on a relationship and on a household. And throughout my childhood, my mother was miserable. She was suffering. I saw that, and rather than be a good kid and be like, hey, mom, I love you, how can I help? I started to lash out at other kids. I started to distance myself from my mom and my dad, who, despite his disease, loved me very much. And of course, as I distanced myself from the adults in my life who loved me, my misery grew worse. And I started escalating my antisocial behavior. I was a bully on the school bus in kindergarten. I developed a taste for antisocial behavior and lashing out and repulsing people. And that very quickly became like an addiction. I needed more and more of the antisocial behavior to get the same kind of thrill that I got the first time I was acting out. So I went from being a bully on the school bus to fights in the schoolyard, to breaking and entering, to vandalism. When I was 14 years old, I started drinking myself. By the time I was 16, I was a full-blown alcoholic. I had been familiar with violence since I was a little kid.